Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa. Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet world, West Alabama, downtown Northport, wherever you're watching us. The Joe Gaither Show right here on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. You're watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. You're listening to us on Apple Podcast, Amazon, and Spotify. You can check us out at Joe Gaither 6 for all your social media needs. You can send me comments, questions, queries, and complaints right there at Joe Gaither 6 on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, wherever you want to connect with us at Joe Gaither 6. And yes, we are going to have a fun week. Hopefully, you're going to have a fun week. What's going on, Wendell? What's going on, my man James? Hopefully, we're going to have a fun week, and we are going to get into Alabama's win. Did the Tide win on Saturday? Oh, gosh. Read social media, and you might think Alabama lost, but no, the Tide did win on Saturday. I think the Tide won on Saturday. Before we get into it, we're going to break down, obviously, Alabama's game against South Florida. Want to encourage you to follow us at BamaCentral, at BamaCentral SI on the Instagram machine. You can find our friends Blue Collar Unplugged, the other BamaCentral Broadcasting Network podcasts, right there in all the podcast platforms. Our friends Blake Byler, Matthew Gibson, and Jacob Pickle bringing you all things basketball related. But today's not going to be anything about basketball. We're 48, something like that, 48 days until basketball kicks off. But we're all going to be focused on football. Alabama opens up SEC play this weekend against Ole Miss. How are you feeling, Alabama fans? Oh, gosh, you better be feeling nervous Nellies out there. I don't think there's any other way you can feel without with watching USF over the weekend and having Ole Miss coming to town. Let's see. All right, what are we going to start with? I got like 7, 8, 9 different notes. I haven't rewatched the game. I'm going to rewatch the game after our program. I'll put up a little Twitter thread like we did last week for the Texas game. But dealing with Nick Saban this morning, dealing with the players this morning, dealing with Lane Kiffin this morning. We're going to have a lot of things to get into. We'll talk about the quarterbacks first. We'll talk about the offensive line. We'll talk about Roydo Williams. We'll talk about, the team's attitude. We'll talk about Nick Saban. And a lot of other things. Tommy Rees as well. So, of course, you can jump in and join us on the comment section like Wendell Hare is joining us right now. Did they win, or did they just show the world why Saban started Milroe at the beginning? That's going to be a conversation. Do you want to jump right to it, Wendell? We'll jump right to it. There's a lot of topics, a lot of theories, a lot of comments that Alabama did not play very hard this weekend because they did not agree with the benching of Jalen Milroe. Obviously, if you watch the game, if you follow the program at all, Tyler Buchner lasted almost the whole half before he was replaced by Ty Simpson. Jalen Milroe never got in the ball game. Obviously, Alabama wins 17-3. I don't really think the win was ever a question for anybody watching the game. The talent was always going to shine through for Alabama, but good gracious, it was like pulling teeth. It was like a 4-hour dentist chair, and not the fun kind. Look, the Texas game, even though Alabama lost, Texas game was a blast. Texas game was back and forth, highly dramatic. Alabama, only a couple things went wrong in the Texas game that led to Alabama losing. Oh my gosh, Alabama played like dog doo-doo throughout the entire game on Saturday, playing with a team that was inferior to them on a talent level. And we had our friends Josh Katz and Matthew Maneri from SoFloBulls.com basically telling us on Friday that USF was going to play hard and play prepared and play aggressively despite the talent disparity. And that's exactly what they did, accumulating, 5, 6 sacks in the game, pressuring every quarterback that was in the ball game, really, really hindering and hampering the running game. The offense looked like absolute dog bleep. Now, was that because of the quarterbacks? Was that because of the offensive line? Was that an effort level? All right, I'm in the camp that no way, Jose, did Alabama tank the ball game. Did Alabama not play their hardest in the ball game because, we're not happy with Nick Saban's decision? I think that is an absurd thought process. People saying, they just wanted to stick it to Nick Saban for benching their guy, Jalen Milroe. I think that is an absolutely absurd thought process. If you think that is you're more than welcome and you're entitled to your opinion. But think about it. Look, I have played on teams. I have been on teams where I didn't always agree with the coach's assessment. But when I got in the ball game, I'm worried about my own performance because I want to continue to play and I want to obviously win the game. I feel better, always feel better when my team goes home and wins. So you never want to tank just because Johnny's playing back in the secondary and I don't like Johnny, or Billy's playing on the defensive line and I don't like Billy. I'm always going to play my outside linebacker position as hard as I can. Now, average Andy athlete over here, terribly average as a football player. But anytime I got my opportunity, I knew that I needed to capitalize and show, okay, this is what I can do, coaching staff. Whether I like Johnny or Billy or Steven or whoever the case may be around me, I'm going to play hard because I want to keep playing. Now, did USF do a lot of things up front? Sure. Nick Saban talking to the media today and after the game about USF stunts and this, that, and the other, and really complicated, and Alabama missing bad communication. Here's where I think the root was on Saturday. The very root, I believe the root was Tyler Booker coming down with back spasms, did not play. Tyler Booker, your leader along the offensive line. Sorry, J.C. Latham, I love you, but you're not the leader. You basically, I think J.C. Latham follows his buddy, his high school buddy, Tyler Booker, in the leadership department. Tyler Booker didn't play. And here's what I think. I mean, this is like several layered thought process, so stick with me if you want to be with me. But here's the deal. I think Alabama wants to play the offensive line of Caden Proctor, of Tyler Booker, of Seth McLaughlin, of TJ Ferguson, and then of J.C. Latham from left to right. I think that's what the offensive line wants to be. I think that's what Nick Saban wanted to move the offensive line to. But what happened? Tyler Booker comes down with back spasms. The trainers, the athletic staff, basically he said as much on the Next Round Live this morning, and you can watch the Next Round Live on YouTube. Those guys do a great job. Tyler Booker appearing every Monday, and we'll talk about his comments as we get into this program. But Tyler Booker basically saying, he all thought, the trainers thought it was best for me to sit this game out so that the back spasms don't get worse. I think you wanted to sub Tyler Booker, TJ Ferguson in for Darian Dalcourt. Darian Dalcourt, oh my gosh, has been average as white bread. He's been vanilla, has been mayo, has been mid. He's been just mid. And mid is a nice word. He's not been good. He's been absolutely average, maybe below average as an offensive lineman already this year. And you've seen Darian Dalcourt go in and out of the lineup really his whole career. He plays center some. Seth McLaughlin replaces him, whether it's due to injury or whether it's due to poor performance. All right, so he's in and out of the lineup as the center. Now this year he's playing guard. Seth's not locked down the center position. And Seth, don't worry, you're on my list too, big guy. The offensive line looks awful. The offensive line is absolutely garbage. And so with a garbage offensive line, I think Alabama wanted to sub TJ Ferguson in for Darian Dalcourt, but you could not do so because TJ Ferguson's got to replace an injured Tyler Booker. And what happens? Okay, Caden Proctor, the freshman, basically leans on Tyler Booker's expertise to get the right calls, to have some chemistry together. Look, Caden Proctor looked every bit as a freshman on Saturday. Golly, getting blown by, getting just beat left and right and center, speed rush after speed rush after speed rush. And that makes me wonder, look, we've had a lot of talk, we've had a lot of conversation about this is the biggest Alabama offensive line ever. This offensive line is bigger than the NFL offensive line. You've had a lot of talk about that. And look, that on the outset sounds great, and especially in the preseason when J.C. Latham is talking about joyless murder ball and Tyler Booker is talking about establishing their will and being physical. You put two and two together, big offensive line, road graders. You're going to run right over them. You're going to drive off the football. That hasn't been the case over 3 weeks. And you haven't protected all three quarterbacks that have played in 3 weeks. Okay, throw MTSU game out the window. MTSU gets 2 sacks, and both of them come on their running backs not being able to pick up the pass protection. What happens? Texas next week, 5 sacks. Only one of them on pressures. The rest of them on miscommunications. You get tackle in stunts. You get in tackle stunts. You get twist on the edge, and miscommunications and physically. Oh my gosh, just physically getting whipped up front. And so I wonder: are the guys too big? Are the guys too big? Are the guys too big for their own good? Yes, Wendell, just because they look and sound big doesn't always mean they play big. Exactly. Caden Proctor looks slow. When you get bigger, you get slower. There's a reason. You look at the Philadelphia offensive line; they're all slim fat. The linemen. We had Evan Neal. Evan Neal was like, "Oh, I'm 340 pounds," and he looked like he's at 280 because he's just built properly proportionate to his body. And look, I think they do a great job with strength and conditioning. I think Ballou and Amy Bragg, they do a great job with strength and conditioning. I wonder if you've just gone too far. I wonder if you've just gone too far into let's get big so that we can push people around. You're not getting any drive off the ball. You're not really agile enough to deal with speed rushers. You got what's the kid's name for South Florida that ends up with 3 sacks? Daquan Evans didn't have a single sack all season. Came away with 3 sacks in the game, 4 tackles for loss. You have 8 tackles for loss total for the South Florida Bulls. And really, I wonder, are we too big up front? Are we too big up front, too slow to deal with speed rushers? I mean, Day Evans is not a big dude. He's not powerful, and I don't know what his NFL future is going to be, but the man is 5'11", 190 pounds. He's listed as a defensive back, but basically they used him as a speed rusher. Like, goodness gracious, are you too big up front? All right, so you got 2 things going on with the offensive line. One, non-continuity up front. I think you're going to see Darian Dalcourt bumped out of the starting lineup this week when Tyler Booker is totally healthy. I think you're going to see TJ Ferguson playing that right guard role. So it's going to be Proctor, Booker, McLaughlin, Ferguson, and Latham from left to right. Good afternoon, CJ Watson. Thanks for checking us out and joining us, of course, right there on the comment section. So you've got physical issues up front, and I wonder. Look, Coach Saban talked after the Texas game. The guys are too soft-setting. The guys are too soft-setting and aren't holding up. The pocket is collapsing on 3- and 4-man rushes. So we'll get to the quarterbacks. We will, but all the plays start up front. Everything starts in the trenches. Look, the calling card of the Nick Saban dynasty has been dominating the trenches up front, and you haven't seen that really since the 2020 offensive line. 2020 offensive line was very, very talented. Alex Leatherwood and Landon Dickerson and them boys. You had, I think Evan Neal was a part of that group as well. Those guys got it done. But really, since the 2020 offensive line, you've had 21, 22, and now 23. Subpar offensive line play has sent Bryce Young running for his life and has totally jacked up the entire Alabama offense this season. I think a lot of people knew that there was going to be question marks with the quarterback. Absolutely knew there's going to be question marks with the quarterback. And I think a lot of people thought, oh, well, Nick Saban has won with average quarterbacks before, i.e. Greg McElroy, i.e. Blake Sims, has won with Jake Cokers, has won with quarterbacks that aren't necessarily the most talented quarterbacks in the world. But when those quarterbacks have played, you've had great great Alabama offensive lines, great running games to complement them, and you've had really good defenses. Oh, look, Abby's above me working out. Oh, what's up, Abby? Go on and lay down, baby. All right, sweet. So you've had great offensive line to complement the average quarterback play that you've had. You don't even have average offensive line play right now. No, not even average offensive line play. And so you combine is it a personnel issue or is it a schematic issue? That's what I'm wondering right now. You cannot fix a personnel issue in a matter of a week. If that's the case, it's going to be a long year. It's going to be a long year the rest of the year. It's already been a long 3 weeks. Oh my gosh, it feels like it's been 6-7 weeks already into the season. Here we are. It's already been a long couple of weeks. But if it's a schematic issue, all right, you can work with that. You can fix that. If it's an understanding issue, all right, I don't understand the protections. I don't understand who I'm supposed to block. You can work with that. You can create understanding, develop understanding. You can get, a deeper sense of understanding, or you can simplify the entire plan. Those things can happen. But you're not going to be able to replace Darian Dalcourt with, TJ Ferguson, I do think is coming. I think TJ Ferguson is going to be the right guard. But you're not going to be able to replace, if Seth McLaughlin can't snap the football, you're not going to be able to just, hey, let's go get a center. James Brockermeyer is still sitting out there. TJ Ferguson's taking snaps at center, but you're going to use Ferguson. You're going to use Ferguson, period, to either replace McLaughlin or Dalcourt. So you're going to have kind of a hole right there with the other one. If it's a personnel issue, if people think, why is Caden Proctor still out there? Why is Caden Proctor still out there? There's nobody else. I mean, Elijah Pritchett is still on the bench, yes, but I guess Coach Saban doesn't trust him. Maybe. I mean, it's very, very clear because Caden Proctor was getting beat by like a rented mule the last 2 weeks, really, the last 2 weeks against Texas and against USF. So it makes me wonder, it makes me think that it's a personnel issue. There's not making changes because the people that are behind the offensive linemen that are playing are just either cheeks or Coach Saban just doesn't trust them. And I don't know whether it takes Coach Saban too long to gain trust in players. Like obviously, we're playing Darian Dalcourt, and as a player, physically, he's just not up to standard. A lot like Chris Owens was a couple of years ago. Chris Owens, very dedicated, a lot like Kendall Randolph a year or so ago. Very dedicated to the program. Good guys. We check all the boxes. We're at practice on time. We're in all the meetings. We know all the right answers, but just physically cannot get it done. How long does it take Coach Saban to gain trust to say, you know what, we're going to pull you out. We're going to try something else. You've had the quarterback carousel already, seeing all three quarterbacks in the first couple of weeks. But how many offensive linemen have you seen? You've seen 6, to my knowledge, 6 in crunch time, with Ferguson being added into the group this weekend due to Tyler Booker's injury. I want to see, Coach, you talked about having 7 or 8 starting offensive linemen throughout the fall camp. Let's see them. Let's see them. I think it's time you put in Elijah Pritchett, you work in TJ Ferguson, and who's that 8th offensive lineman that they probably talked about? Is it Jaden Roberts? Is it Miles McVay? No, it's not Miles McVay. Is it Wilkin Formby? I don't think so. Who is that 8th offensive lineman that Coach was referring to? I definitely think your 6th and 7th are Elijah Pritchett and TJ Ferguson. Well, actually, Ferguson first, obviously. But I'm ready to see differences on the offensive line. And if you haven't done it already, it's gonna look. Ole Miss is licking their chops, and we'll get into that in a little while. We definitely will get into that later in the week, as Ole Miss opened up as an 11-point underdog on Sunday, and now is down to a 6-point underdog. Bama needs to stick with the game plan they had at the end of the game when Roydell was running the football. You're exactly right, Wendell, and we're going to get onto that as well. That's one of my notes. You're exactly right. Wendell Hare has stolen all of my notes, it seems like, which I appreciate. It means we're on the same page and we watched the same game on Saturday. So what do you do on the offensive line? You put in TJ Ferguson and you sub out Dalcourt. You're still going to have a problem at the center position. I like you, Seth McLaughlin. I think you're a good kid. I think you work your tail off. And I think you're not a bad blocker, really, not a bad blocker. But what's the problem here? You can't snap the football anymore? Do you have the yips? Is it an issue? You can't hit the strike zone anymore? I mean, come on. Look. I know I've never been a center before. I've never had another 300-pound man line up right in front of me wanting to take my block off and have me try to, hit a free throw consistently. Look, I'll get to the free throw line. I'll be 50, 60, 70% at best. You guys can say, oh, I can hit a free throw much better than that. Great. Good for you. But it's basically like shooting a free throw over and over and over and over. You got to hit the quarterback in the chest, and you can't fire it back there at 1,000,000,000 miles an hour. Now, you can't float it back there like a feather either, but the snapping issue, 2 weeks in a row now, you've had snapping issues, and all of this to say, the offensive line issues, the personnel issues, the miscommunications, the physical defects along the offensive line, it leaves you to wonder how are you supposed to evaluate the quarterbacks? Look, we're about to get in the quarterbacks, but you're trying to evaluate Buckner and Simpson and Milroe, and people are calling for Dylan Lonergan in our comments, and it's fine, but how do you evaluate them fairly when Ty Simpson is getting crushed? His first 2 dropbacks, he's crushed. But man in his face, he's crushed. And, literally crushed the entire game. Now, part of it, Ty Simpson does have to get rid of the football quicker. You got to process quicker, Ty. It's part of the game. Welcome to college football. But you also have to protect him. You got to give my man a chance. You got to give my man a chance to work through a progression and to find the right players. When he was able to do that, or when he was given that chance, boom, you find CJ Dupree for that 40, 45-yard reception. The guy can hit a pass. Okay, whoa, we have a passing game. Look, it all starts up front. It all starts up front, and we're going to circle back to Wendell's most recent comment in just a second. You saw Nick Saban basically at the end of the game, after the ball game, basically said, "Oh, partly I'm upset with what he said, but partly some of it's true." He said, "Oh, I'm really proud of the guys. I'm really proud of the way they competed." Coach, they didn't compete very hard. It didn't seem like they competed very hard. Now, I don't think that there's any semblance of truth to them tanking their effort due to the quarterback decision. No, I don't. I think that is an absurd thought. These guys are still playing with pride for themselves. I think these guys are still wanting to prove themselves. I mean, look, every rep is on tape for NFL evaluators or for future schools in the transfer portal. If that may be the case, every rep is on tape for the coaches to see if they're going to play next week or not. I don't think that there's any truth to the guys didn't play with great effort, but it certainly seemed like something was missing. It certainly seemed like there was an issue, whether it was mental, whether it was physical, whether it was just a lack of preparation, whether it was a hangover still from the Texas game, whether it was these guys reading their press clippings and believing their press clippings that they're bums all week. Look, they're not bums. They're not bums. They're still 4- and 5-star recruits, and it's still Alabama. You walked into the week as a top 10 team. Now you're a top 13 team, sliding in the polls because you're not really impressing anyone. You didn't impress me. I definitely had you slide in our SEC power rankings. If you want to check out those SEC power rankings, they're available right there at BamaCentral.com. Moving Alabama down to 7th in the league in my power rankings because, goodness gracious, not impressive at all. But I don't think there's any truth to them tanking their efforts because, we wanted to play Jalen Milroe. I think what you saw on Saturday is just the reason why Jalen Milroe was selected as the starting quarterback for the first 2 games. I think that Coach Saban said, this offensive line is not getting it together. This offensive line is struggling in pass protection. And really combined with the running backs struggling in pass protection. People have been talking about where's Justice Haynes? Well, my man must have a problem protecting the passer. Jace McClellan sure has a problem protecting the passer. Roydell Williams is average at protecting the passer. Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, you've barely seen them. There must be an issue for protecting the passer. We're seeing breaking news. Michigan State has officially fired Mel Tucker. That's a hot mess that I don't want to get into. But Mel Tucker, former Alabama defensive backs coach, Georgia defensive coordinator, now at State. Probably deserved that firing. You got a problem in pass protection. So, of course, you put the most mobile guy out there, and then you default to the most experienced guy. And it seems like Jalen Milroe has the ear or has the heart of the football team. Now, why did Jalen Milroe not play this weekend? I've heard about a dozen different excuses. If you trust Coach Saban, which most of the time I do, if you trust Coach Saban, he says, he didn't play well in practice. And so obviously we're going with the guys who played well in practice. Obviously Coach Saban was talking about this past weekend, and Coach did name, if you missed this morning's press conferences, Coach did name Jalen Milroe our starter going forward, at least for this week, and we'll see how long that decision lasts. I hope it lasts the rest of the year. Let's lock in a guy. Let's mold an offense behind him, and let's get it going. But Coach Saban's saying that, he probably didn't practice very well. You're hearing rumors. I'll say it again, rumors that Jalen Milroe pouted throughout practice and did not respond very well to Tyler Buchner receiving first-team reps. Rumors. You're hearing rumors that Jalen Milroe was unable to explain his reads against the Texas defense, especially when it came down to the 2 interceptions. Rumors that Jalen Milroe may or may not have been in concussion protocol, and therefore that's why he didn't play. And rumors that Jalen Milroe was suspended due to his activity or actions throughout practice. Now, again, rumors. I don't know that that's true. What I do know is true, because I am not at practice. What I do know is true is that Jalen Milroe really fulfilled the good teammate role on the sidelines throughout the game. He did. Whenever Ty Simpson got that touchdown, Jalen Milroe was right out on the field, hyping him up, pumping the team up, finally really encouraging the Alabama offense that did play. Jalen Milroe, you can look through the photos and see that Jalen Milroe led the team out from the tunnel from the very beginning. Now, was he suspended? I have no idea. Coach Saban didn't comment. He's not going to comment on that. Was he in concussion protocol? I have no idea. Was Coach Saban just saying, you know what, this is our last chance to see what you got in Tyler Buchner and Ty Simpson? We've watched Milroe for 2 weeks. This is the most logical answer to me. We've watched Jalen Milroe for 2 weeks. We've seen him against MTSU, subpar competition. We've seen him against Texas, the highest level of competition. Texas now up to number 3 in the AP poll. We've seen him against the low and the high. Now we got to find out what Tyler Buchner's made of. We got to find out what Ty Simpson's made of. We got to see if those guys can operate the Alabama offense, even if it's a subpar opponent. I think that is the most likely. No. He was never asked about suspension or concussion. Neither of those. He was asked about why Jalen Milroe didn't play after the game, and basically Coach Saban kind of danced around it, saying, "Oh well, we played the guys who played the best during practice this week. We wanted to see what we had in Ty Simpson and Tyler Buchner." That was essentially his answer after the game on Saturday. Wasn't asked directly about a concussion, wasn't asked directly about a suspension or attitudes, but he did kind of insinuate response to the news, response to the poor Texas play. He kind of insinuated that maybe Jalen didn't receive. We're going to give Tyler Buchner some first team reps this week. It sounded insinuated like he didn't really receive that the best per se, but no confirmation on concussion or suspension. Want to make that very, very clear. And so that's why I said rumor. Okay, where am I at? Okay, yes. So I think the most logical answer is that Saban said, you know what? We're playing Ole Miss next week. The games are about to really matter. You're playing Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, A&M. The next 4 weeks are going to be basically make or break for this season, for this team. Make or break. You got to win them to stay alive. You have to win them because all your goals hinge on winning the SEC West. Hinge on going through the SEC West schedule. Look, oh my gosh, LSU looked like they found themselves. Now, it was against Mississippi State, sure, but they look a lot like, lost my pen. They look a lot like, there's another pen, comfort pen, you know what I mean? They look a lot like the team that was right there neck and neck, 1 and 2 for Alabama's, for the SEC West at media days. I think most likely Nick Saban knew that Alabama was going to beat USF with or without Jalen Milroe, and we're going to just decide. We're going to find out what we have in Tyler Buchner and Ty Simpson in live reps. And what you saw on Saturday is probably exactly what you've been seeing in practice. Did Tyler Buchner know where to go with the football? Yes. Mentally, he knew where to go with the football. He made the right reads. Physically, though, he was incapable. Absolutely incapable. Was he looking at the right player, trying to throw to the right player? Yes. Did the ball get there? Hardly ever. What's Buchner's final numbers? They're terrible. 5 of 14 for 34 yards. Oh my, absolutely terrible. So my man's completes 5. Now again, goes back to the offensive line. The defensive line's right in his lap the entire time, but just absolutely incapable of delivering the football to the Alabama receivers on a consistent basis. The offense looked horrendous, absolutely horrendous with Buchner under center. And I think it boils down to his physical capabilities. I don't think that he can play with a rush right into his face. And I think he does know the offense. I think he knows the way to go to 1, to 2, to 3, the check down. I think he understands the progression, but I don't think that he's capable of actually delivering the football. Now, he did have the nice deep ball to Jermaine Burton on the one time that he was protected. I got to give him credit for that. But it was what? A foot. Oh, just a foot further. Now, Jermaine Burton, lay out, my man. Lay out. You have been really good over the first 2 weeks. This week, not so much. Now, he didn't get a whole lot of opportunity, but if you lay out right there, dive for that ball. It was 1 foot outside of your reach. Now, does the pass need to be a little bit better? Sure. But Burton, lay out right there. You're already in the end zone. Oh, man, that could have been a great play to boost everyone's confidence before Buchner got pulled out of the game. All right, so you throw Buchner out there. He's incapable of delivering the ball. You throw Simpson out there. Simpson the statue. Now, if Simpson feels the rush, I hate to use the phrase, sneaky athletic. He'll sneak up on you, and he can move the football. He was technically a dual threat quarterback coming out of high school, but look, he played 2A high school football up there in Martin, Tennessee. Like, whoop-de-doo. He wasn't playing the best competition. I think that Ty Simpson is a fine quarterback. I think that he is the best arm on the team. Yes, I do. But his mental process, something about the mental processing just doesn't have it. Just doesn't have the right. He can't see the rush. He can't move in the pocket. He can't feel the rush in the pocket. He was getting crushed out there. He was absolutely getting crushed out there. And so I think you saw really on Saturday why Alabama leaned on Jalen Milroe for the first 2 weeks, why Alabama gave Jalen Milroe basically the reins the first 2 weeks, and why Nick Saban on Monday today said, oh, we're going back to Jalen Milroe. We're going back to Jalen Milroe. Why? Because the offensive line is terrible. The offensive line is absolutely awful. And either can't mentally get it together, can't physically get it together. And does that give you questions about Eric Wolford? Oh, I hate calling for people's jobs. I really do. It makes me so uncomfortable because, look, everybody wants to keep their job. But my man, Eric Wolford, you've been here. This is going on your third year. Oh, good. Not good. Just not good from Eric Wolford's perspective along the offensive line. And so it makes me really question. I know he's a heck of a recruiter. I know he's got great connections with the players. But, golly, something is missing with the Alabama offensive line. And it makes me think maybe Eric Wolford, you are it. Yeah, Wendell Harris, you're exactly right. Milroe has the legs to get out of trouble if the line fails to block. So here am I. Quarterbacks, Buckner Simpson, why Milroe didn't play, offensive line, Booker out, Ferguson in, moves, no move. Oh, I want to hit this. How unusual do you Alabama fans or do anybody who's watching Alabama feel that it was that when J.C. Latham didn't flip from right tackle to left tackle during this offseason? Look, understand you're comfortable with right tackle, but my man's the traditional progression. Now, Jedrick Wills didn't follow this progression, but the traditional progression for Alabama offensive linemen is play guard. You saw Evan Neal, you saw Alex Leatherwood do it, play guard, then kick to right tackle, then flip to left tackle. 3-year progression: guard, right tackle, left tackle. And JC, maybe JC's just like Jedrick Wills, where you're only going to play right tackle. But I, now seeing in retrospect, I think that might be maybe a sign of weakness along the offensive line. Maybe JC, you can't flip from right to left. You're expected to be one of the top tackles in this coming year's draft class. I think that your draft stock is falling quickly. With the performance of the offensive line, the performance of you giving up a sack on Saturday against USF, and I'm wondering if the sign of not going from right to left tackle should have been a sign that we all saw in fall camp to say, oh, all this talk of the offensive line might just be talk, might just be noise, and maybe these guys don't have it all together, because clearly they don't. They're talking about, joyless murder ball, we want to make teams quit. Who have you made quit? You didn't MTSU, sure. I guess you made them quit in the first week. But Texas, absolutely, you didn't even make them think about quitting. And USF either. I don't think USF let off the gas pedal at all on Saturday. So I think maybe that's a retroactive sign that we should have seen that maybe this Alabama offensive line not quite capable of living up to all the talk and all the noise that they aspired or that they made over the fall camp. I want to compliment Roydell Williams. We're doing a lot of bad. We're doing a lot of bad, and obviously there was more bad than good on Saturday. But got to give Roydell Williams a compliment. 17 carries, 129 yards, and a touchdown. And we'll go back to Wendell's comment right there to lead off the program. Bama needs to stick with the game plan that they had at the end when Roydell was running the football. All right, so this goes back to what I heard from Nick Saban after the game. He says, "I challenged the offensive line to go take the game." He says, "I challenged them to take the clock and the game." And I hear that, and I think, great. Where has that challenge been the entire season? Now, look, I'm no football caveman. I understand we're not going to do 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I know that you can't run triple option football anymore. The wishbone is dead. I get that. And I'm not sitting here calling for Alabama to get in the wishbone. I'm not sitting for Alabama to go flip it up and do a triple option offense, anything like that. But you have to empower the offensive line because, yes, all this talk that we're talking about the offensive line, all the negatives that we're putting on the offensive line through the first 30 minutes of the program, I fully believe the offensive line has detrimental issues right now, has fatal flaws right now, flaws that will end up resulting in more losses this season if they're not fixed, like today. But what's the difference? In the last 6 minutes of the game, and the first 54 minutes of the game, Coach Saban decides, we're going to put the game in your hands. And what happens? They end up marching down the field. Was every play great? No. Was every play a huge gain? No. But what happens in the last 6 minutes of the game? Alabama gets the ball with 5:56 to go on the 20-yard line. Roydell for 3 yards. Roydell for 48 yards. Roydell for 1 yard. Ty Simpson run for 6 yards. Jam Miller for 1 yard. Timeout. Penalty on South Florida, offsides. Roydell for 16 yards. Penalty on Alabama on Caden Proctor. Roydell for 12 yards. Roydell for 7 yards. Ty Simpson rushed for 3 yards. Roydell for 2 yards. Roydell for 1 yard. Ty Simpson for 1 yard. Touchdown. Game over. I'm sorry. Look, the next football game I'd coach will be the first. But I've watched this game for a long time. And it sure seemed like the offensive line maybe said to themselves, yeah, we've got the game right here in our hands. And of course, you do have the big 48-yard rush for Roydell Williams. And of course, that has to, kind of be thrown out as an outlier. You throw out the highest rush and the lowest rush, the two outliers, look in the middle. That's pretty much what you're doing. And of course, and you give Roydell credit for the 48-yarder. Absolutely, Roydell, great credit. The offensive line embraces Coach Saban's challenge that, we're going to take the last 6 minutes of the game. Coach, why don't we challenge these young men, these men, at the very, very beginning? Why don't we challenge them at the very start? And look, you didn't throw a single pass on that last drive. You didn't. And okay, sure, you're not going to be able to live that way for a whole game. You're not, period. I know you can look at your boy Bill Belichick and what was it 2 years ago against Buffalo? He had like 48, 50-something rushes to only 2 passes. I know. But come on, lean into the running game. And going back to the very beginning of the conversation with the offensive line, Seth McLaughlin and his snapping issues can't snap the daggum football consistently. Get under center. Get under center. Have those young men's hands right underneath the rear end of the center. And get under center so that Seth says, boom, right up my rear end. Don't have to throw it. Right up my rear end. And look, it's flabbergasting. Going back to last week, the game plan against Texas was severely lacking, offensively and defensively. The game plan was just silly against USF. And now, granted, maybe the game plan was we just have to test Tyler Buckner. We just have to test Tyler Simpson. We have to see if those guys can do it. And so once we've decided, they can't really do it, there's 6 minutes left in the game, let's go finish it out, we'll put the ball on the offensive line, and they will push the inferior defensive line of USF down the field, and we'll win the game. We'll get out of here. We'll go fly home, and we'll see what we need to do. Maybe that's it. Maybe they intentionally, there's certainly an argument to be made that they intentionally were just seeing what was going on in the passing game, seeing who could develop anything in the passing game. But here we are, 3 weeks in. And just like I kind of talked about in the preseason, you're 2-1. You've lost to Texas. If you want to make the Texas game irrelevant, what do you have to do? You got to go through the SEC West. And boom, Ole Miss comes to town this coming week, and they are salivating. They put the film on over 3 weeks, and they said, this team is average as white bread. this team cannot, we can play with this. There's nothing that Alabama has put on film over 3 weeks that would scare any team with any sort of confidence, any sort of legitimacy. And I'll tell you this, Ole Miss is confident, 77-3, 77-3 against Mercer. Sure, it's Mercer, whatever. All right, then you go down to Tulane, you beat Tulane, ranked team on the road by 17 points. All right, you can say it's Tulane, but they're a ranked team, and I believe they won the Sugar Bowl last year against USC. Or did they lose? Well, they played in the Sugar Bowl. And then you bring Georgia Tech in. Sure, it's Georgia Tech, whatever. But they're a Power 5 team, and they beat the brakes off of Georgia Tech. They're confident. They're confident. And if you know anything about Lane Kiffin, how hungry he is to finally get a win over his man, Nick Saban. Look, you hear Lane Kiffin over and over and over again. I respect Nick Saban. He kind of pokes fun at him on social media while also giving him a lot of flowers on social media. He also gives him a lot of credit for reviving his career, this, that, and the other. And Lane, they have a very love-hate weird relationship. I think it's mostly positive. But Lane Kiffin wants to beat him. Lane Kiffin would cut his right arm off to beat him. I believe that. And now Pete Golding, you throw the Pete Golding factor in, and all the mess you Alabama fans have talked about Pete Golding for the last 3 years, he's coming to Tuscaloosa to try to get his name back. So what have you seen over 3 weeks that leads you to believe that Alabama is going to win this game? Now, we'll get into that later in the week, but right now, it's nothing. So, yes, you revert back to Jalen Milroe. And you say, we have to tailor the game plan for Jalen Milroe. We have to tailor the game plan for this offensive line. You have to tailor the game plan for your strengths. Tommy Rees comes in fall camp, his only media availability. He says, oh, well, my offense isn't really the Notre Dame's offense. And yes, I'm learning the Alabama terminology, but I'm going to fit it to the personnel that we have. So far, I haven't really seen that. I know I've seen it with the Jalen Milroe deep ball. His deep ball is nice. And you can argue about his passing acumen or not, and it's fine. We can all argue with you. But when we talk about the deep ball, my man has a nice deep ball. Is his intermediate game kind of suspect? Yes. Is his decision-making kind of suspect? Yes. Is his ability to read a defense and work through progression suspect? Yes. But he's got a nice deep ball. He does. And so, okay, let's figure out how. Look, I'm not a genius. I'm not a football genius. What do? You got an offensive line that wants to eat, that's talked about eating. You put on a good 6-minute drive to end the game. You're going to likely sub out Darian Dalcourt. Get the dadgum hammer out. Get the hammer. If you have the hammer, you got to use it. We've talked about 4 or 5 running backs. Jace McClellan, Roydell Williams, Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, Richard Young. You've talked about a stable of running backs. You have a quarterback who's, look, let's face it, his running ability far surpasses his passing ability. It just does. So you have a quarterback who can run the football. So that's 6 different guys who can run the football. You've talked about the tight end room throughout the offseason. You bring in C.J. Dupree, Amari Niblack, Danny Lewis. You've got Robbie Oots. RG3. Oots. Oh, my gosh. RG3. What was worse on Saturday? The Alabama offense or RG3 calling the game? Oh, they were neck and neck for me. RG3 was terrible. But you have a tight end room, Robbie Oots, oh gosh, I forgot one of the others. But you Danny Lewis, Amari Niblack, C.J. Dupree, get into 12 personnel, get into 13 personnel. You got problems with the snaps. Get your butt under center and run the daggone football. Run the football at all these plays. And look, you want to talk about the problems with the defense? The defense has been balling its tail off. The defense has really been playing well. You can go back and look at the big plays, the explosive plays that Alabama gives up in the Texas game and say, oh, maybe the defense has problems. Yes, there's some communication issues on the back end, and some of that has to do with Caleb Downs, understanding the defense, Terry and Arnold communicating, and coach attributed that to, not being fully healthy through the entire Texas week and not being up on their communication. That's a coaching issue. That is an absolute coaching issue. If you got guys who are not healthy enough to practice and you're going to throw them out there on Saturday, you have to make sure that they fully understand the game plan. Whether you're meeting extra or someone, Malachi Moore, is gathering them extra to make sure that all the communication is hatched down. Yeah, I know Malachi and Jalen Key had weird weeks of practice 2 weeks ago. All right, let's go bring them in a meeting room and go over the film 1.5 billion times. The coaching on the coaching with this team has left a lot to be desired through 3 weeks. The approach to the game, the approach to fit the personnel. Like, look, you cannot anymore lay back against some of these teams. Let's go rush and blitz some of these quarterbacks. Quinn Ewers, he didn't look that great against Wyoming. He didn't look that great against Rice. We made him look like a superstar. Now, he's a good player. He's a good player. But you made him look like a superstar because you sat back and you didn't rush him. And so he sat back with a nice offensive line and boom, bomb shot to Adonai Mitchell. Boom, bomb shot to Xavier Worthy. What are we doing here, game plan-wise? And I understand you're still early in the year. You are working out the kinks. I get that. But it's time to start learning the lessons week in and week out. And you got to apply them right now, today. Right now, today. You want to beat Ole Miss? Look, Ole Miss and the Rebels, they're going to come into Tuscaloosa with all kinds of confidence. And just like Texas did, they're going to come into Tuscaloosa going right at Alabama's throat. No fear. Lane Kiffin's going to have his popcorn. He's going to go for it on 4th down 1,000,000 times in a row. And they're going to have no fear. So the sense of urgency has to be incredibly increased. Has to go from, we're Alabama, we're 5 stars, we'll figure it out. Yeah, we're playing USF. We'll just run the ball in the last 6 minutes and get a touchdown and make this look like a 14-point game when this really was a whole lot closer. You give the defense a lot of credit. You stopped them on 4 out of 6 4th downs. You ended up with, 2 different turnovers. I know Kool-Aid, I think, had his interception overturned, but Malachi Moore had an interception as well. Like, you got to raise the level of intensity, the level of urgency, the sense of urgency. Basically, that's the best way to put it. Sense of urgency from, we're just Alabama. Y'all need to lay down and respect us and lose. To, hey, we're Alabama. Our entire essence is threatened right now. The Alabama football program's entire essence of dominance is being threatened right now. You see them slide down the polls. Okay, you get a little break going from 4 to 10, 3 to 10 when losing to Texas. But it's disrespectful. You beat USF and barely did it. The AP pollsters, the coaching pollsters, they were right to drop you by a spot or two. They were absolutely right. You got to raise the sense of urgency right now, and I think it starts in the coaching staff room. You have to approach this weekend's game much differently than you did. You don't have Bryce Young back there throwing the football, making reads, working through his progression in a half a second. Oh my gosh. I hope you guys really miss Bryce Young and understand how good he was, working through progressions in seconds and delivering the football with accuracy, moving in the pocket, feeling the rush. Yeah, you see what you got right now when you don't have a generational quarterback. Sorry, I like you, Jalen Milroe. I like you, Ty Simpson, a little, but you absolutely don't have a generational quarterback that you had in Bryce Young. And so you got to work and mitigate around that. It doesn't mean you can't win. Was Greg McElroy a generational quarterback? Hell no. Was Jake Coker a generational quarterback? Absolutely not. Was Blake Sims getting you to the college football playoff and winning an SEC title, a generational quarterback? Absolutely not. And no disrespect on those guys. They won titles. They led their team. They fit in to what the offensive coordinators were doing for them. And so come on, guys. Whatever mindset you found in the last 6 minutes, whether it be, okay, we're just better than USF, we have them worn down, we're finally going to move them off the football, you just got to get into a mode where you're running the football. Get the hammer out and hammer these defenses. Be patient with it. Have some patience. Get into a play-action passing game because we've seen Jalen drop the bombs from the sky. Shoo, into Jermaine Burton's hands. Oh, into 17 Isaiah Bond's hands. Into Amari Niblack's hands. Look, I'm good with let's hammer, and then let's get into play-action passing. Let's roll the pocket out for Jalen Milroe. Roll the pocket. Let's have some quarterback power into the game plan. Let's get some QB read in the game. Read the end on the game plan. We don't need any RPO. because Jalen's shown you the RPO is a little bit too much for him to handle. And okay, that's fine. I'm not here to, we're not here to try to make Jalen Milroe into something that he's not. We got to accentuate what he actually is. So, I think that Alabama's offensive approach this week, and Tommy Rees, look, you have left me severely underwhelmed through 3 weeks. Everybody talks about you're a young offensive genius. Well, my mans, you have left me severely underwhelmed through 3 weeks. And you're going to have to either keep up with Ole Miss this weekend, or you're going to have to slow the game down on offense by running the ball effectively and play action passing game. Either one of those two things. What's more likely, do you think? What is more likely? Do you think Alabama's going to keep up and score 60? No. There's been no evidence of that. None at all. So your chance of beating Ole Miss is to slow the football game down. Let the defense make adjustments on the sidelines while you're running the football, while you're hammering the ball, while you're protecting the ball, while you're milking the clock, while you're controlling the pace of the game. That's what needs to be this weekend. And I haven't seen it through 3 weeks. Oh, I am concerned that you will not see it this year. Now, granted, just like Lane Kiffin said in his morning press conference, you cannot judge a team week to week. Every week is different. Just because Alabama had a poor week against a subpar opponent in Tampa doesn't mean they're going to play poorly this weekend. It doesn't. But the evidence through 3 weeks sure says that Alabama has a lot to clean up. And I wonder, Coach Saban, if you've got the fire to get it cleaned up. And I wonder, Tommy Rees, if you've got the mental acumen to build a game plan around a running quarterback and put him into great positions. All right, so look. Here we go. Let's keep going. We've got a handful more topics. We might go over an hour. It's fine. You guys hanging out with me on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. We're watching us on all those platforms. You're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon. We're talking about the USF win. Was it a win? Ooh. What was good? What was bad? You can jump into the comments section at Joe Gaither 6, like my man Wendell Hare and James is doing. We've got a lot of people in the comments. CJ Watson as well. We've already addressed the team lay down because they were upset at Nick Saban for changing Jalen Milroe. No, I think that is an absolutely absurd opinion to have. And I think that if that's the case, kick them all off the team and play the walk-ons. That's not the case. Look, that is an absurd take. Those guys want to prove themselves well. They're playing in an Alabama uniform. They're playing for their NFL futures. They're playing for their own playing time in the future. Let's address rumor mill that Lane Kiffin throws out on Sunday. They will have a team meeting as well on Sunday, and that's pretty much going to wrap up our show. All right, so Nick Saban addressed it today in his Monday press conference, but yesterday, Lane Kiffin comes out into his little discussion. He was talking to On3 Sports and says, I think Alabama has changed their defensive coordinator. I think that Travaris Robinson is coordinating the defense now. We looked at the film, we saw their game plan against USF, and the game plan looks a lot different than what it did in the first 2 weeks. So I think Travaris Robinson, based off what we know and who we know in the Alabama office, Travaris Robinson is now coordinating the defense. Coach Nick Saban, on his Monday press conference, opens up and addresses it in his opening statement, says, no, Kevin Steele is still coordinating the defense. And so, all right, let's talk about this, and this is in two layers. First, I do believe that Kevin Steele is still coordinating the defense. However, I do believe that Travaris Robinson has more control or received more control this past week against USF. Do I believe that it's going to be permanent? I don't know, and I don't think so. However, I think that what Coach Saban's explanation it made the most sense to me on Sunday, and it made the most sense to me today. Coach Saban's explanation was, look, we had a trouble against the Texas game, getting the calls in from the booth to the sideline to the field. So we streamlined the process to have the calls come in from the field, and that's why T-Rob looked like he was in more control. T-Rob on the field, Kevin Steele in the booth. I think that makes perfect sense because I was in the stadium, Bryant Stadium for the Texas game, and how many times was I screaming from the top deck, get on the ball, get a play call, get set, figure out the play call, defensively speaking, a bunch. And this has been an issue with Alabama. It's been an issue with Alabama for a hot minute now. not getting the play calls in a timely fashion against some of these fastball teams. And I think Coach Saban looked at the Tennessee film last year and thought, oh, this has been an issue. This was an issue for us last year. Remember, Alex Golesh, offensive coordinator at Tennessee, boom, goes to USF. I absolutely think it was an issue getting the play calls from the booth to the sidelines to the field. And so how do you mitigate that? You cut out the middleman. You get the calls in from the sideline to the field. Does that mean that Kevin Steele was not coordinating the game plan? No. I think Kevin Steele was up in the booth, coordinating the game plan, giving advice to Travaris Robinson and basically saying, here's what I want to see here. Here's what's coming up next. Here's their tendencies. But sure, was T-Rob calling some of the plays? I think that's perfectly reasonable to assume and to guess. Now, I will notice that a little bit better when I rewatch the film, and that I'm going to do here in about a half an hour once I finish this bad boy. And we'll cut it up on our social media like we did last week and see what you guys think about it. But I don't think that Kevin Steele got fired. I don't think that the replacements or the responsibility was stripped from him. I think, honestly, that Coach Saban wanted to speed up the process, and he may want to speed up the process again this week against Ole Miss. Look, these fastball teams, they make it very, very stressful. Coach Saban wants to, one of his beauties and one of his flaws is that, we are able to scheme the right scheme, put the right personnel, and make it very tough on the offense because we have the right personnel in, specialized personnel for each and every situation. Now, when they get it right, and it works well. When they get it wrong, it turns into massive chunk yardage, which you saw against Tennessee many times, and you've seen it against fast-paced offenses a lot over the last 5 to 7 years. You have, respectfully speaking. But when you play slow against Alabama and you allow Alabama to match personnel on defense and you allow Nick Saban to study the tendencies and really decide what they're going to attack, I think the Alabama defense usually looks prepared. Where it looks unprepared is when they go fastball. When the opposition goes fastball and keeps Alabama on its heels, we're catching you in substitution violations. We're catching you in miscommunications. We're catching you based off our speed. And so to mitigate that, I think you saw a slight adjustment this past weekend with Travaris Robinson given more responsibility. I like that adjustment. I think that shows Coach Saban's ability or Coach Saban's willingness to make an adjustment, something that I questioned him on last week. And so will we see that going forward? Maybe. I think Travaris Robinson is highly respected in the Alabama athletic department. He's a hell of a recruiter. And I think he is on the up and up. Obviously, getting promoted from cornerbacks coach to secondary coach in the offseason. And I think given a little more responsibility right here in this past week. Do I think it's a Tosh Lapoy, Pete Golding situation where Tosh Lapoy reportedly lost all his defensive coordinator duties early in the season that he was named defensive coordinator? No, I don't think that at all. I think that it was an adjustment made to work around the speed of UCF and might be something that Alabama continues to do going forward when you play against faster teams like Ole Miss this weekend, like Tennessee in a couple of weeks, and like other teams who will attack Alabama in that fashion. So I believe Coach Saban in that fact. I think Lane is correct. I think Coach Saban is correct. Lane probably correct in his assessment. Things were different defensively, schematically speaking, on Saturday. But I think Coach Saban's assessment of, hey, we're just doing it to mitigate the speed and to streamline the process of getting the play calls in from the sideline, getting our players ready for faster offenses. I think that makes perfect sense. And so, no, I'm not worried about, I don't think that we've had a defensive coordinator change. Just maybe a little more responsibility for T-Rob. And I'm for it. All right, last topic is on the team meeting allegedly called by the players. Our man Tyler Booker goes on the Next Round Live as he does each and every Monday and says, I think that we called a players-only meeting on Sunday, and I think we're finally on the same page. Ugh. What? First, I get it. All right, I get it. You call a players-only meeting, and you got to work things out. You get things off your chest. You've heard a lot of chatter in the last 2 weeks from former players that there's no leaders, there's no vocal leaders, there's nobody that wants to be the bad guy. There's nobody that wants to hold their teammates accountable. And you heard from Chris Budden, the sideline reporter, on Saturday's game, saying the Alabama sideline was dead. This was midway through the game, where things still weren't going right. You barely had a lead. I think it might have even been tied. That there's no life on the sideline, no chatter on the sideline. Oh, man. Tyler Booker basically saying that the players got things off their chests, emphasizing unity going forward. And so what's that mean? Honestly, Tyler, I hope it means good things. I hope there's great. I hope it means that you've cleared the air, and whatever thoughts about Johnny or Billy or Steve, whoever is off the table. Look, if somebody was willing to be the bad guy and call everybody out, saying, "Hey, this is not good enough. This is not the Alabama standard." Look, you've had people talking all off season about return to the Alabama standard, return to the Crimson Tide standard, play up to the standard, play to the standard that was set before you. And you haven't seen it at all through 3 weeks. All right, you saw it against MTSU. You fooled me. Against MTSU. You saw it for the first 4 or 5 series against MTSU. And really, you haven't seen it since. Oh, yeah. So I have a hard time really taking a lot of comfort or taking a lot of belief into what Tyler Booker said over the weekend or said today about the players-only meeting on Sunday. We'll just have to see. At this point, we will just have to see if Alabama responds to the players-only meeting. Maybe going back to Jalen Milroe is the right answer. Look, I think it's the right answer. Maybe it will spark and energize the entire team. It sounded like Coach is essentially saying the cake is out of the oven. We're rolling with Jalen Milroe for better or for worse. And if that's the case, you're pigeonholing Tommy Rees into conforming a game plan for him. And maybe you are putting all the speculation to bed about Ty Simpson, Tyler Buchner, and the Alabama offensive line, the receivers, the tight ends. Everybody can, get on the same page with Jalen Milroe is our guy, and let's all ride forward. And maybe, who knows, the players-only meeting that happened on Sunday might end up being beneficial. But all that said, I'm having a hard time buying into any talk that I'm hearing from anyone at the podium right now, because what you're hearing at the podium and what you're seeing on Saturday are two completely different products. All right, so that's going to do it for our show today. Alabama wins against South Florida 17-3. We talked about the good. We talked about the bad, mostly bad. The offensive line, absolutely atrocious. We kind of broke down why. I think Tyler Booker's injury prevented the Crimson Tide from subbing out Darian Dalcourt. I think that Seth McLaughlin is still snapping the ball all over the yard. And I think that Tyler Booker, with his return, will settle Caden Proctor just a little bit. I wonder if the Alabama offensive line is too heavy for its own good and is not agile enough to pass block and is not agile enough to run block at the second level. So I think that is junking up all of your quarterback evaluation. I wonder if the reason Jalen Milroe didn't play is just because Alabama wanted to play Ty Simpson and Tyler Buchner to make sure the fan base, not really the fan base, but the Alabama coaching staff and the Alabama team saw what they had in those two quarterbacks. Now that we know what we have, hopefully the noise behind, let's see Buchner, let's see Simpson, will dissipate just a little bit. And hopefully Tommy Rees will work a game plan, will build a game plan that accentuates Jalen Milroe's skill sets going forward. Ole Miss is coming to town this week. They're coming for you next, Alabama. You're only a 6-point favorite. I think that's absurd. If you're a gambling man, go ahead and jump on Ole Miss plus the 6. And we'll continue to talk about it throughout the rest of the week. I'm going to venture to get a couple of bigger guests on the program this week. I got a couple of guests in mind. I'm going to give them a call literally after I hit end on the program right now today. Go tell a friend about the show. Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral is on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, at Joe Gaither 6, at BamaCentral on YouTube. We are at Apple Podcast, Amazon, and Spotify. Tell a friend about the program, and we will talk to you tomorrow right here on the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com.